A chorus of silent screams echoes through the halls of justice as a dozen brave souls, cloaked in anonymity as Jane does, wield the sword of justice against an entity sworn to protect. These voices shattered the silence, accusing the FBI of a profound cover-up, a complicity that allegedly spanned over 2 decades in the heinous saga of Jeffrey Epstein. These nameless heroes, victims of Epstein's monstrous machinations, dared to challenge the narrative woven by the shadows of power. A dozen of Jeffrey Epstein's accusers have filed a lawsuit against the U.S. government, alleging that the FBI failed to properly investigate the financier's sex trafficking crimes as far back as the 1990s. Whispers of Epstein's vile trade in young flesh reached the ears of the FBI. Yet instead of leaping to rescue the innocent, the Bureau chose the path of silence, turning a deaf ear to the cries of the oppressed. It wasn't until 2006 that a feeble spark of investigation flickered to life, only to be smothered 2 short years later when Epstein, the wolf in sheep's clothing, offered a meager plea in a Florida courtroom. The cries of the tormented fell on indifferent ears as the FBI, they claim, turned a blind eye, allowing Epstein's reign of terror to persist until his final arrest in July 2019. But by then, the damage was done, irreparable and vast. Their lawsuit, a beacon of defiance, paints a picture of suffering and despair. They speak of lives shattered, of innocence robbed, of souls scarred beyond repair. They stand not only for themselves, but for all those who fell victim to Epstein's web of depravity, demanding answers, demanding justice. In the hallowed halls of justice, where truth is said to reign supreme, these Jane Does have dared to challenge the status quo. Their quest for truth, their pursuit of justice, knows no bounds. They demand recompense for the irreparable harm inflicted upon them, seeking solace in a system that failed them so miserably. As the wheels of justice grind forward, the shadow of Epstein looms large, a haunting reminder of the horrors that lurk beneath the veneer of civility. The battle ahead is long and arduous, but these nameless warriors stand undeterred, fueled by the fire of righteousness, determined to expose the truth, no matter the cost. How many victims are there? Estimates of the total number of girls allegedly abused by Epstein varies, with accounts ranging from a few dozen to over 100. The recent indictment charges Epstein with sexually exploiting and abusing dozens of underage girls at his homes in Manhattan, Palm Beach, and other locations, with allegations dating back as far as 2002. However, it seems likely that the total number of victims is much higher. Investigations into Epstein began in 2005 after the parents of a 14-year-old girl told Palm Beach police that Epstein had molested their daughter at his home. According to the Miami Herald, by 2008, when Epstein was granted his now infamous plea deal, federal prosecutors had identified 36 underage victims. Julie K. Brown, a journalist who published a series of articles on the allegations against Epstein, told the New York Times that early in the process of reporting, she received a heavily redacted police report that mentioned more than 100 Jane Does. In November 2018, Brown reported that they had identified about 80 women who alleged that they were molested or sexually abused by Epstein between 2001 and 2006. Of these women, the Herald was able to locate around 60, 8 of whom agreed to be interviewed. A girl named Wild, who first met Epstein in 2002 when she was 14, told that by the time she was 16, she had probably brought him 70 to 80 girls who were all 14 and 15 years old. Wild said that Epstein told her he wanted girls as young as I could find them, and that he wanted as many girls as I could get him. It was never enough. Other witnesses have testified in civil court that hundreds of girls were brought to Epstein's homes. How many victims have come forward so far? 4 of Epstein's accusers spoke to the media on the record: Courtney Wild, Michelle Licata, Virginia Roberts Jeffrey, and Gina Lisa Jones, who are now all in their 30s. Other accusers who have since come forward include Sarah Ransom, Maria Farmer, Annie Farmer, and Jennifer Arios, as well as an unknown number of Jane Does. Epstein has settled lawsuits with Wild, Licata, Jeffrey, and Ransom, among others. The Herald reported last week that since Epstein's arrest, at least a dozen new victims have come forward with allegations. Courtney Wild has been fighting for justice since 2011, when she and another anonymous victim sued the federal government to challenge Epstein's 2008 non-prosecution agreement, claiming that, by not informing victims of the deal, prosecutors violated the Crime Victims' Rights Act. Wild told them that at the time she met Epstein, her mother was on drugs and couldn't provide for her. Jeffrey preyed on girls who were in a bad way, girls who were basically homeless, she said. He went after girls who he thought no one would listen to, and he was right. In a press conference, Wild urged other victims to come forward. Michelle Licata first met Epstein when she was 16 and a sophomore at Palm Beach High School. At his Palm Beach home, Epstein took off her bra, touching her with one hand and masturbating with the other. He kept trying to put his fingers inside me and told me to pinch his nipples. Gina Lisa Jones told that Epstein molested her when she was 14 and that she was paid $200 to give him a massage at his home. During the massage, she says, he told her to remove all of her clothing and fondled her. If you think, at 14, $200, that's a lot of money at 14 years old, Jones said in a 2018 video, adding that the other girls she knew who visited Epstein came from trailer parks that were having gun shootings. Jones, now 30, said she's been in therapy for 10 years and has never told her therapist about Epstein's abuse. Nobody talked about it, she said. If I told anybody, they'd be like, "You're a whore, you wanted money, why would you do that?" Nobody would understand. Virginia Roberts Giuffre was working at Mar-a-Lago when she was recruited by Ghislaine Maxwell to be a masseuse for Epstein. Describing her life before Epstein, she told, "I went from an abusive situation to being a runaway to living in foster homes." Giuffre settled a lawsuit against Epstein in 2009. In court documents, she said she was forced to have sex with Epstein and lent out to his friends, including Prince Andrew and Epstein's attorney and Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz. In 2015, Giuffre filed a defamation lawsuit against Maxwell, Epstein's former girlfriend and alleged recruiter, who has repeatedly called Giuffre's allegations entirely false. Maxwell settled with Giuffre, who is represented by David Boies, in 2017. Giuffre filed a defamation lawsuit against Dershowitz, with whom she alleges she had sexual intercourse at least 6 times, starting when she was 16. Dershowitz denied this and told the Herald last fall, "I am the victim. David Boies and these women are the perpetrators. They have willfully and deliberately concocted stories in order to make money, millions and millions of dollars." The lawsuit accuses Dershowitz of employing a desperate barrage of false and increasingly defamatory attacks against Giuffre.
Jeffrey Epstein's penchant for teenage girls was an open secret in the high society of Palm Beach, Florida, and the Upper East Side of Manhattan, which was disregarded by the FBI. For over 2 decades, the Federal Bureau of Investigation permitted Jeffrey Epstein to sex traffic and sexually abuse scores of children and young women by failing to do the job the American people expected of it. As a result of the continued failures of the FBI, 12 women bring this lawsuit to get to the bottom once and for all of the FBI's role in Epstein's criminal sex trafficking ring. They are seeking an $500 million of compensation and damages. The lawsuit follows the unsealing of the court documents containing the identities of people linked to Epstein and his lover Ghislaine Maxwell. Notably included in the unsealed documents, which contained almost 1,000 pages of depositions and statements, were former U.S. Presidents Bill Clinton and Donald Trump, who have not been accused of any wrongdoing in the case. The disclosure was part of a defamation proceeding between Maxwell. She was sentenced in 2022 to 20 years in prison. Maxwell and Epstein were a couple in the early 1990s before becoming professional collaborators and accomplices in sex crimes for almost 3 decades. Epstein was a financier with a powerful network in the United States and abroad. He was accused of raping young girls, but his suicide by hanging in a New York prison in August 2019 halted his prosecution. Even his suicide was mysterious. Jeffrey Epstein was left alone in his jail cell with a surplus of bed linens the night he killed himself. Nearly all the surveillance cameras on his unit didn't record. One worker was on duty for 24 hours straight, and despite his high profile and a suicide attempt 2 weeks earlier, he wasn't checked on regularly as required.
Inspector General Michael Horowitz blamed numerous factors for Epstein's death, including the jail's failure to assign him a cellmate and overworked guards who lied on logs after failing to make regular checks. The failures are deeply troubling, not only because they allowed Epstein's suicide, but also because they led to questions about the circumstances surrounding Epstein's death and effectively deprived Epstein's numerous victims of the opportunity to seek justice. The lawsuit against Ghislaine Maxwell goes on to claim that between 1996 and 2006, the FBI continued to receive reports, complaints, and tips concerning the illegal sex trafficking of women and underage minors, sex abuse and human rights violations committed by Epstein and his associates. In March of 2005, the FBI was alerted by the Palm Beach Police Department of child prostitution. In fact, there was a 14-year-old girl who was solicited to Epstein's mansion for sex. The agency, the suit claims, didn't open an investigation until a year later. Epstein orchestrated an illegal sex trafficking ring for the elite, and the FBI failed to adequately investigate the abuse, failed to interview the victims, failed to investigate the crimes, and did not follow routine procedure or offer victim assistance notwithstanding credible reports and tips. The negligence committed by the FBI resulted in the continued sexual abuse of 12 women at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein. His so-called client list has remained a secret, although a federal judge overseeing a separate lawsuit allowed allegations against a number of wealthy people in his orbit to be unsealed, including business leaders, prominent politicians, and Ivy League academics. Epstein himself allegedly threatened them with violence to prevent them from coming forward. Epstein accuser Maria Farmer told police in New York City and the FBI that she and her sister had been victims of Epstein and his accomplice and former lover, Ghislaine Maxwell. But the FBI allegedly hung up on her and did nothing to investigate the report. Allegations continued to crop up until Epstein was arrested for having sex with a child prostitute in 2005. Even his bank, J.P. Morgan Chase, alerted the government of suspicious transactions around this time. However, that information remained secret for almost 20 years. Epstein ran a trafficking enterprise between 2002 and 2005 in which he paid hundreds of dollars in cash to girls as young as 14 to have sex with him at his Manhattan home and his estate in Palm Beach. Jeffrey worked with employees and associates to lure the girls to his residences and paid some of his victims to recruit other girls for him to abuse. In this way, Epstein created a vast network of underage victims for him to sexually exploit, often on a daily basis. Epstein, a well-connected hedge fund manager, had previously evaded similar charges when he secured a non-prosecution deal with federal prosecutors in Miami. Instead of facing federal charges, Epstein pleaded guilty to 2 state prostitution charges in 2008 and served just 13 months in prison. He also registered as a sex offender and paid restitution to the victims identified by the FBI. That arrangement came under intense scrutiny last November in a Miami Herald investigation that examined how it was handled by then U.S. Attorney Alexander Acosta, who now serves as Labor Secretary in President Donald Trump's cabinet. Epstein served 13 months in jail, during which time he was allowed to leave for work release during the day. He continued to sexually abuse victims during his work release in close proximity to those who were supposed to be monitoring him. Search warrants served in that case found evidence that Epstein had other victims, including a message book that contained some of their phone numbers. The lawsuit alleges they were never interviewed by the FBI. Blackburn, a Republican, has separately demanded the FBI release unredacted records of Epstein's flight logs, Black Book, and other evidence from his estate. Blackburn told Fox News Digital that the FBI has long been aware of Jeffrey Epstein's alleged human trafficking ring. Yet, they have failed to uphold their duty to the American people to properly investigate this horrific abuse and bring those who participated in it to justice. We know the FBI seized a treasure trove of surveillance footage from Epstein's Palm Beach home where he ran his operations. Why won't they release those tapes or the flight logs I've been requesting for months? Epstein's countless victims deserve justice, and the FBI should be held accountable for shamelessly sweeping this under the rug. The Herald investigation said that Acosta agreed not to file federal charges against Epstein despite an investigation identifying 36 underage victims. They essentially shut down an ongoing FBI probe and further granted immunity to any potential co-conspirators in the case. A federal judge in Florida ruled that the Department of Justice broke the law by failing to confer with Epstein's victims about the agreement. Former child abuse prosecutor Roger Knaff said that the Herald's investigation brought a tremendous amount of public attention on this case. When the FBI searched former President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago home in early August, it took less than a day for far-right internet personality Jack Posobiec to summon Epstein's ghost. The federal agents executed a search warrant of Jeffrey's mansion in New York City and seized a vast trove of lewd photographs of young-looking women or girls. Some of the photos were discovered in a locked safe, along with compact discs with handwritten labels that read, "Young Girls Nude Pics." They found the massage room was still set up in the same way it was 15 years ago, with a massage table and sex paraphernalia. While he had to register as a sex offender as part of a 2008 plea agreement with federal prosecutors in Florida and pay settlements to victims, victims say that were not told about the agreement. These are not the first alleged victims to sue the FBI for negligence in investigating sex trafficking crimes. 13 victims of Larry Nassar, the USA gymnastics coach who sexually assaulted hundreds of female athletes, sued the FBI for $10 million each in 2022. Due to fundamental errors by the FBI, said attorney Jamie White, who represented the victims, Nassar continued a reign of terror for 17 unnecessary months. If the FBI had simply done its job, Nassar would have been stopped before he ever had the chance to abuse hundreds of girls. Under federal law, a government agency has 6 months to respond to a claim. The FBI said it does not comment on litigation. When asked in December 2023 why his agency did not expend more effort in investigating the tips about Epstein's sex trafficking ring, FBI Director Christopher Wray told the Senate Judiciary Committee he would get with his team and figure out if there is more information they can provide. It is thought that over 100 individuals were victims of Epstein's crimes. It is not known if these 12 plaintiffs were compensated from a previous settlement with Epstein's estate, J.P. Morgan Chase, and Deutsche Bank, which netted a total of $500 million before legal costs. The revelations of the FBI's mishandling of the Epstein case have sparked outrage and raised questions about the agency's commitment to combating sex trafficking. The lawsuit serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of holding government agencies accountable for their actions and inactions. As the victims continue their quest for justice, the case is likely to have far-reaching implications for the FBI and its future handling of similar investigations. In the wake of the lawsuit, the FBI faces a crucial moment in its history. The agency must demonstrate its dedication to protecting the most vulnerable members of society and ensuring that such egregious oversights never occur again. For the victims, this lawsuit represents a chance to reclaim their voice and expose the systemic failures that enabled Epstein's horrific crimes. As the legal battle unfolds, the world will be closely watching to see how the FBI and the U.S. government respond. The outcome of this case will not only impact the lives of Epstein's victims, but also serve as a testament to the power of justice and accountability. What do you think about this case? Did FBI did this on purpose? Were they trying to hide his crimes? Share your thoughts in the comments section below.